Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Version 1, a podcast where interesting people come to talk about their creative processes, imposter syndrome, inspiration, failures along the way, and much more. I'm your host, Waverly. We are at My Friend's Basement podcast studio in Brooklyn. Follow the show on Instagram at Version 1 Podcast and subscribe to our Substack, version1podcast.substack.com. You can also find me on buymeacoffee.com/Waverly Colville. Listen to this episode normally wherever you get your podcasts or head over to YouTube to watch the video version and leave us a nice review. I am here this week with my guest, Helen Zhao. Helen, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Can we just start off with having you introduce yourself?
Oof. Okay, so I'm a video journalist. I guess I really made my dreams come true when I was at CNBC for 5 years, and that's where I met you. So I, did everything in video from pitching, reporting, scripting, shooting, and editing, basically just owning videos from beginning to end, covering personal finance and entrepreneurship. Videos anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes long, mostly specializing in the more in-depth explainer videos, like anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. And then I actually quit my job in 2022 to go pursue a lifelong dream of traveling the world. And I'd had that dream, since I've been an adult. I always knew I wanted to travel full time for about 1.5 years. And so that's what I went and did. And I came back in 2024, definitely a different person. And just been, adjusting back into the real world and real life since then.
Yeah. And now you're a travel content creator, right? And you also like work in video still, right?
Good point. Well, I mean, it's nice to hear you reaffirm to me that I am a travel content creator, just because it's not something that is making me a full-time income right now, or is not like my bread and butter, but it's definitely something that's taken up a good portion of my life. Since last year. And so, I have decided to try my hand at building my own travel and money content brand on YouTube and Instagram. I'm still doing the video journalism thing and trying to build something of my own.
Yeah, I'm so excited to dive into all of that with you. And just to catch people up really quick with how we know each other, we worked at CNBC, not together, but I think we met probably in passing and then connected on Instagram. And I'm so excited to talk to you because I feel like our career trajectories have a lot of parallels. I've also quit jobs. I love to travel. I also do content, things like that. And so I'm so excited to dive into all of that with you this episode. Can we start?
That's awesome. We have the same passions.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we start out with when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I think in early childhood, I cycled through a few different ambitions. At first, I wanted to be a doctor. Then I wanted to be a geneticist. And then I wanted to be an actress. And then I settled on wanting to be a writer. And I think wanting to be a writer was my career aspiration that I had for at least 10 years. And I was working on, a novel as a kid. And I was like, oh, I want to be the youngest published author. But then I don't know that I think that desire in college, basically, that transformed into a passion for journalism, as opposed to fiction writing. I think that fiction writing was a way for me to sort of look inward. It was an introspective exercise, but then journalism was a way to explore the world around me and to tell other people's stories and to be curious about other people and the world around me instead of just, looking within myself. I became passionate about journalism in college and have just never wanted to do anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Where did you go to journalism school?
I went to USC.
Oh, nice. They have a
Yeah.
fantastic program. It's like Annenberg, right? It's called.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
program is
What about you?
fantastic. I went to
Yeah, I
Mizzou,
did.
University of Missouri.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Mizzou has a really good program too.
Yeah, yeah. I had a good time there. And there's a lot
Mhm.
of like Mizzou grads at CNBC randomly. I don't know why. They
Yeah.
have like a filter or like a partnership or something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I meet tons of journalists who went to Mizzou.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so,
Mhm.
it sounds like your first passion was writing, but when did you decide to go more in the video and multimedia direction?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was in college. Yeah, so I think that, I think I used to be pretty shy and quiet and keep to myself, and I loved writing at that time, and I still love writing. But once I was in college, I think I just became a lot more outgoing, and I loved interacting with people and communication and like building relationships. And um so I think in college, when I was working for UCLA student media, um I got into there was the opportunity to pivot from writing. I actually started on the copy editing desk. So I got into the Daily Bruin, in a uh, I really like started small, I guess you could say. Once I got in on the copy editing desk, where I was copy editing people's articles, you're allowed to cross train under into other departments. So that's a really easy. It's like a shortcut to get into other departments. But I had no radio or video experience. But I became very interested in both. So I cross trained into radio and video. And that's when I was like, okay, this medium feels more I feel more connected to whoever's listening or watching on the other side through radio and video than I do through writing, right? Because people can actually hear you and they can see you. So I think that's when I really got into radio and video. Um, is because I guess there's a way for you to be more immediately present in the content and to build, I think, more of a connection with whoever is watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it lends itself to a different type of storytelling that writing does that allows you to see and sort of like interact and be more immersed in the story than I thought writing can do sometimes. So that's
Yeah.
I started out as a magazine writing major and then I moved into
Mm.
multimedia. So similar, I was going to be a
Mm.
writer and then for very similar reasons I also switched into multimedia in college.
Oh, cool. Wow. That's very similar trajectory.
Yeah, for sure. And then did you always have a love of traveling?
No, I definitely didn't always have a love for traveling. It like my family didn't travel that much as a kid. Oh, that really didn't make sense.
Yeah.
My family
No,
didn't
I
travel
get
much.
what you
As a kid,
mean.
we didn't travel very much. I mean, my parents are from China and they grew up really, really poor. I mean, when they were growing up in China, everyone was really poor. So, traveling wasn't really a thing. And it just wasn't something that they really valued when I was growing up. So, I went back to China several times to see my relatives, and that's when I traveled. But it's never something I had a hunger for as a kid or as a teenager. I think I caught the travel bug when I was about 24, when I went on the first trip that I ever planned myself and, bought plane tickets for and, made a schedule, etc. And that was to Hawaii. And I went with my brother and my mom. And it was because I had, finally gotten my first big girl job that allowed me to pay all my bills and have, extra money left over. And so I was like, okay, I've never been to Hawaii. Let's plan a trip. And after that trip, I just really caught the travel bug. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just became obsessed with it.
What was it about Hawaii or that trip that made you fall in love with travel as a whole?
Ooh, that's a good question. What about that trip? Well, I think it was just I mean, first of all, Hawaii is one of the most beautiful places in the world. I can honestly say that after having been to 40 countries and been to some of the most beautiful places in the world. I can definitely say Hawaii is, top three. So it's that, but it's also, I think that it was just taking place at a time when I think I was ready to fall in love with traveling because, yeah, I mean, I think that maybe something that makes us interested in being journalists is that we love exploring the world around us and we love maybe novelty, and we love connecting with people and immersing ourselves in the world around us. Like, we don't want to just be sitting behind a desk looking at spreadsheets and things like that, right? So I feel like there's already, people who are drawn to journalism might already have like a bit of an adventurous, curious mind. So I think that it was just that I was feeling a little more settled in my career and I had some money. And so, that allowed me to take this trip. It allowed me to, I think, take the initiative to, plan and pay for this trip, whereas I couldn't have done that before. And I didn't have my parents who were, taking me around the world or anything like that. So, I think it was just the timing was right and I was able to take that trip. And I think I'm just, maybe on a bit more of like an adventurous, novelty seeking person. So I think, yeah, the stars just kind of aligned at that time.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a very empowering experience for you because you were able to do that for the first time.
Yeah, it definitely was really empowering. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
I want to jump ahead a little bit. So you're working at CNBC full time, and then you end up taking this year and a half long journey around the world. But I want to start where you're working at CNBC. When did you first initially get that idea to take this big of a trip?
So, okay. So basically, I think the seed was planted probably when I was about 20. And okay, I do realize that earlier I had said, no, I definitely did not grow up loving traveling. But then I also said I had this lifelong dream of traveling the world. So to clarify, when I said lifelong dream of traveling the world, I meant more so like in my adulthood. Like once I became an adult, I had this dream of traveling the world. But it still wasn't when the dream first came to mind, it wasn't like a real thirst that I really focused on very much. It was just an idea. And I was like, oh, that would be nice. I should do that at some point. But it kind of more so started as a vision of doing a Euro trip because I did a travel study program when I was in college, when I was about 20 to the UK to study Shakespeare because I was an English major. And honestly, I did this trip not even because I really wanted to explore the UK and not even because I really love traveling, but because I had broken up with an ex boyfriend and I really wanted to go away, And so I was like, oh, well, why not? And at the time, it was like I was covering it with student loan. So I didn't really think that much of it. But anyway, so that was my first time going to Europe. And I did the UK, I did France and Italy. And so when I did that trip, I was like, man, it would be really cool to do a bigger Euro trip one day. But, I was just thinking about 3 months. So I always had that vision in mind from when I was about 20. But I guess how did it evolve into a bigger dream of doing something like 1.5 years around the world? Maybe that started around when I really caught the travel bug, like maybe around when I went to Hawaii. Like, so that vision of 3 months in Europe maybe kind of blew up into this year and a half around the world.
That's so cool. When you were starting to plan and really take this dream of yours seriously, what were some of the things you did to prepare for it?
So this was always a sort of a vision that I had in the back of my mind, but it really took time to become more concrete. And it wasn't something that I felt was necessarily realistic until maybe a couple years before it actually happened, or maybe like 3 years, when around then did I start feeling that it was truly achievable. Maybe even just 2 years before. I mean, I knew that it was something I needed to do in my life, but still, the pieces had to fall into place because I was, feeling a little behind in my career through my 20s. Like I got the rotating news associate position at CNBC when I was 27. And before that, I worked a couple jobs that I just didn't love. And I was really trying to break into video, but I was having a hard time. And so I felt pretty behind in my career and didn't have like any money. I mean, I had some money from jobs I worked, but then I spent pretty much most of it when I was in grad school, and then had another job, and then yeah. So by the time I got to CNBC, I just like didn't really have any money. So pretty much I needed my career at CNBC to evolve in a very positive direction, and also my savings to grow in order for me to feel ready and comfortable taking that big of a trip. Like I needed to feel like I had accomplished enough in my career, and then I had enough of a chunk of savings to be able to go. And I didn't know if it was going to really work out at CNBC necessarily, because we both started as rotating news associates on a 1.5-year contract. I didn't know if that was going to turn into a job. And at the end, I actually had a lapse of like 1 month or maybe 2 months when I left CNBC and I didn't have a job. But during that time, they were able to create a new contract position for me. And so I came back to CNBC on a contract. But the pay was pretty low, and I didn't have, I maybe had like 5-6 days, sick days a year. I didn't have any paid vacation. And so that wasn't like a long-term sustainable thing either. And at that point, I was probably 29. And so, yeah, I mean, I was still felt really behind and I couldn't really plan for that trip at that point either. But then I stayed as an associate producer at CNBC Make It on that contract for about 1 year and 3 months. And so that's when, and at that point, I got promoted actually really fast, because being an associate producer for 1 year and 3 months is actually very, very fast. But it's because a producer role had opened up on an adjacent team. It was called Grow. It doesn't exist anymore, but a producer position opened up, and I was hired to be a producer. And so at that point, my income jumped a good amount. And I also had vacation, the full package of benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, I finally stopped feeling behind. And I was 30 by the time I got that job. And I felt like, great, I'm where I need to be. I'm doing what I love. And so I was in that position for 2 years. And then so I was 32. And so I think at that point, as soon as I became a producer at Grow at CNBC, I was like, okay, I can start really planning my sabbatical. At that point, I knew the sabbatical was going to happen. It was just a matter of when. So I think by the time I was 32, I was like, okay, it's now or never.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you get to the point where you were able to quit a job to take this adventure in terms of like the emotional side of it? Because it can be really hard to quit stability, a full-time job, and not be like, let's say, going to another job or going to something stable. You know what I mean? Like, as someone who I quit the job after I had at CNBC, I went to a different television network, and I was there for 2 years, and I was really unhappy. And so I had quit that job without another job lined up, not to travel. I did do some traveling during the unemployment time between that and the following job, but it was really hard for me to gain the confidence and force myself to quit a situation that wasn't good for me, So I'm curious, what was that like emotionally?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. Let's see. I don't think that I was actually really mentally prepared for the life change that I was about to step into, because I didn't basically, maybe I was a little naive, maybe I was a little overconfident, or just, you could also just say I could have never known, but I had done really well at CNBC. I had made really great relationships with my managers. And before I left, the head of HR told me, we can't imagine a world where we wouldn't have you back.
Oh,
And
that's really
so,
nice.
yeah. So basically, I always had in my head that I can go back to CNBC. CNBC is like the backup plan. Maybe there will be even better. And also my friends at the time were getting promoted. I had one of my best friends was promoted into her dream role, and she was making, so much more money as well. And I knew other people who were getting promoted. So I was like, I think the industry was doing relatively well at the time. And so I was like, yeah, for sure, that's going to happen to me. Like I had a really good run. And so I think I got used to that. But something I've definitely learned in journalism is you can never be too confident or cocky because things can change instantly. And it's not easy to find a great job in this industry. So anyways, I just wasn't prepared for the reality that would hit once I came back from my sabbatical. And which is that um, thousands and thousands of journalists have been laid off in the last 2 years. Companies have gone under. The industry is just not what it used to be. And when I got back from my sabbatical, CNBC had just gone through a lot of layoffs, and they just didn't have a position for me. So that, it definitely felt like a bad breakup. And so to answer your question about what was it like emotionally, if I had known if I had known what I was giving up and how hot and what the stakes truly were, I think I would have felt differently emotionally. But I think I just felt I had maybe had a bit of a false sense of security, you know?
Mhm.
Maybe I got a little overly confident. I didn't realize what I was giving up, you know?
Yeah. Do you think that helped you though? Because maybe had you known that like the job market would be, in kind of a precarious situation, maybe it would have deterred you from having your adventure. You know what I mean?
I actually, I've asked myself that question a lot. Like, what would I have done differently if I had known? Do I wish hadn't gone on a sabbatical? And I don't think so because I just felt like my life wasn't worth living unless I did this trip. So it was one of the most important things to me. But I think I would have done things differently. I would have done the sabbatical differently for sure. And it's possible. Maybe I would have stayed at CNBC for one more year. That's possible. That's always possible. Maybe I would have really tried harder to work out some sort of arrangement where I stay on some sort of contract with them and work in a way that would also allow me to travel. I don't know if that would have even been feasible, but I probably would have tried to pursue that path. I would have mixed my travel with more work. If I had known that, at the end of the sabbatical, I would pivot to wanting to become an independent travel and money content creator, and I wouldn't be necessarily going back to a cushy corporate job. I would have definitely done things differently, like maybe continue to freelance for for CNBC, which I had the opportunity to do, but actually just didn't do it. I just chose to just focus on traveling and learning instead. So I would have freelanced, and I would have started my content creation much earlier, like from the moment I left. I would have been working while I was traveling and thought about my traveling as a little bit more of a long-term lifestyle, as opposed to thinking, okay, I have this year and a half to see the world. I need to see everything. And then I'm going to go back to my corporate job, have a family, and settle down. That was the mentality back then. But now I realize that's actually, yeah, it wasn't, that wasn't going to be the reality, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that because I know it's really hard to make that leap, especially when there's no sort of I don't know, whenever I've transitioned jobs, it's always been like, oh, because a new job came up or something like that like kind of
Mhm.
pushes you. But it's great that you had the self-initiative, right, to make this happen. Because there's so many people, myself included, that is like, oh, I'll do that next year or I'll do that later,
Mhm.
So that's great that you
Mhm.
had sort of the self-determination to make your dream happen. Um,
Yeah,
did
what
you
was it like for you? Like when you quit your job? Like,
It was really fucking hard because I was at HBO and there was a lot of, and you probably felt this too at CNBC. So many people were like, "Oh, that's so cool." Like it's a lot of external validation. But it was a lot of external validation. So it was really hard to say no to that. I was also only
mm,
24. And so it's not like I
mm,
had this giant nest egg waiting for me. But I had
mm,
gotten to the point where I was so miserable. I just was like, I am too young to be this like sad, basically. And my job
mm.
was like I would wake up crying every day. There was a senior producer that was like a bully to me, basically. And it just was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't care if I'm fucking broke. I don't care if I need to be a bartender for like a year. Like, I just need to get out of this job. And it took a lot of internal work, especially with my therapist, to like help me get to the point where I was able to come up with the confidence to do it. And I eventually saved up enough that I had like 10K. So like enough to get me through a couple months in New York. And at that point, I set a date for myself and I was like, okay, it was the end of January. And I was like, okay, by the end of January, I'm going to quit my job. I put it in my calendar and I was like, my voice was shaking when I called my boss. I was so scared. And I thought about making up a fake job. Like, oh, I'm leaving for like another job, just so I had that like sort of quote unquote reason, not just that I was unhappy. I ended up not doing that. And I ended up being very grateful I didn't end up doing that because I was honest. And that took a lot of courage. So it was really scary and it was really, really hard to do for sure.
Wow, that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
But that's amazing that that you chose your mental health and well-being over that, validation.
Yeah. When I look back on my career now, it's one of my proudest moments, I think, of my career is actually quitting a job. Because
Wow.
it takes so much more courage to quit a job for your own happiness, like similar to what you did, than it does to quit a job for like, oh, I'm just going to another job. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and I think actually part of my reason for quitting CNBC as well was not only the love of travel, um, and I loved my time at CNBC, and I loved CNBC and the people and everything. But I think just the media industry and trying to make it in this really cutthroat field and everything just like really burned me out. And I was starting to have like an existential crisis every day where I'd wake up in the middle of the night and just be like, oh my God, I feel like I'm going to wake up and be 80 years old and just wonder where did my life go? What happened? Everything. I just feel like my life just went by at lightning speed and I didn't actually live it. And I feel like that was one of my biggest fears.
I hear
And
you.
so
Yeah.
part of quitting my job is also to try to develop my mental health and stop. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like I just had this debilitating anxiety, that made it a little harder to get through each day,
Mhm.
and so it was just unlearning a lot of things and ways of being that I had and mentalities that I had developed um, through my 20s that I developed in order to try to survive and win in my career, But I guess, yeah, I just felt like those mentalities were no longer like serving me anymore. And I just felt like I needed to go and let go of that,
Yeah. I
in order to be
100%
happy.
agree. 100% agree. Yeah. It took several weeks after quitting that job to even like decompress from how stressful and how just emotionally taxing it was on me for sure. When you
Mm.
quit your job and started traveling, did you always want to create content and try to pursue that path, or did that come after you had been on the road for a little while?
Yeah, I definitely did not have an intention of being an independent creator or to create travel and money content on my own. I mean, I was I was interested in creating travel content before a company. It was always for a company. And so I actually, for example, I actually had a couple, there was a big freelance piece in Bali that I was supposed to do for CNBC. And then I ended up not doing it because I just thought I wanted to prioritize my, fully immersing myself in my travels, and that I could always do this project another day and I'd have the rest of my life to make videos for a big company. I didn't have the vision of becoming an independent creator and like having my own YouTube channel or building an Instagram or anything like that until I got back from my travels. And what pushed me in that direction is that when I got back, I truly realized the state of the industry. And, I learned from CNBC that they would not be hiring, and I was not going to be able to go back. I mean, maybe one day, but at least that wasn't going to be happening anytime soon. And so I actually started talking to a few of my trusted mentors in the journalism industry, and they had also just gone through layoffs themselves too. And so we talked, and they said they really encouraged me to pursue the creator path. And they said, oh, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be a really tough, it's a huge slog. But they said that they saw this as the future of journalism. And yeah, so I think it's because of them. And because it was out of necessity, I think.
Yeah, that's
But
cool. Oh,
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
yeah. Oh, yeah, I was just going to say it was out of necessity, but now I see how cool it really could be to be an independent creator, but the journey to get there is, really hard.
Yeah, I was going to say it's really cool that people from traditional media backgrounds encourage you to be a creator, because I feel like sometimes in the traditional media industry, people don't necessarily I think it's changing now, but a couple of years ago, independent creators just weren't as respected, I don't think, by traditional media. So it's cool that people from that background are really encouraging you to create your own path.
Yeah, I guess that is a little bit ironic, but it's also, I think, probably because they themselves had developed some cynicism around traditional media, because they also went through their own layoffs too. It was at a time when thousands of people were just being laid off. And I think they were just seeing the state of things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Who are some other travel content creators that you admire or look up to?
Okay, so when I think about, I'm curious. What do you think of when you think travel content creator? Like, what's a travel content creator?
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who write travel blogs. I have some travel journalists that I follow. I think you can come in many different shades, because an quote unquote influencer is a lot different than it seems like what you're doing, which is like these news reels that are still very informative and colorful and travel centered, but it's obvious that you have a news background as well. They're very informative in a way that, an influencer's content can be more inspirational, but might not necessarily teach you about a place. So I think it really runs the gamut. I think there's a lot of different definitions.
Yeah, for sure. Because the people that I'm thinking about, they travel a lot, but I actually don't really I don't know if I consider them like a travel creator. So two of the people I'm thinking about is, well, number one, I mean, maybe it's even really cliche to say because everyone loves him, but like Johnny Harris he was from Vox, and he's like one of the biggest creators on YouTube of all time, like from a journalism background, like the biggest journalism creators. And his content is really more geopolitics focused. So he covers a lot about like global conflict, politics, international relations. But he travels a lot to do that. And like one of the series that he became really famous for at Vox was called Borders, and it was all about, um, I guess you could say international relations. And he was traveling the world doing these stories. So yeah, it's like, I guess, I don't know. I guess when I think travel creator, I often think someone who is showing us beautiful places that you can go as a tourist. You know, I often think of people in the travel niche as like people who are catering to tourists. But I guess I've done some of that, yeah. But I definitely do kind of want to like move away from that. I kind of want to be someone who tells stories that take place in places around the world, as opposed to recommending places for people who to go as tourists, which I definitely have done. But I kind of want to like move away from that a bit more. And another creator who I really admire, his name is Upton, and he is from CNBC actually. So he was at CNBC, I think the same time period that I was, also making videos, but he worked out of, I think, Hong Kong, and I think he was in the UK for a bit as well. So he was on the CNBC international side, but he was laid off during the pandemic and decided to pursue being a creator, and he became very successful. So he has like 1 million followers on TikTok, like 250 something, around 250K on Instagram, around 250K on YouTube. And his stuff just goes viral all the time. And I just really admire how he carved out that path for himself. Well, okay, so the reason I connected with him is because this guy who follows me on Instagram, who was following me, I don't know how, but randomly during my sabbatical when I had only like 1,500 followers, he at the end of my sabbatical, he was like, "Oh, maybe you could be the next Upton." And I was like, "Huh? Like, who's Upton?" So I looked him up and I was like, "Wow, this is so cool." And so I just reached out to Upton. I was like, "Hey, I'm also from CNBC. I would love to learn more about how you made it." And so then we talked, and then that's how he referred me to that company that I had a job with for about 8 months before that company. They conducted a mass layoff like a couple months ago, and my job was eliminated. So
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. That's really
Yeah,
tough.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were first starting to create travel content online, did you have any imposter syndrome or any sort of hesitations about doing so?
Yeah, I do, and I think I still do. Um, a little less so on Instagram now that I do have a little bit of results. So I'm like almost at 10K followers on Instagram, which is like I think a pretty big milestone. I mean, it's definitely not like, an impressive number for an influencer, but for just like an average person, everyday person, I think 10K is like quite a lot of followers. So to almost hit 10K, I think is a pretty big milestone that most people will be like, "Oh wow, like you have 10K followers. That's a lot." So I think I have it less so on Instagram now, but definitely, while I was okay, and also I'll say about Instagram that I was never really trying to be an influencer on Instagram. It just sort of happened. Like I was really focusing when I got back from my sabbatical. During my sabbatical, I was literally just posting on Instagram for fun. I was like, I do not want to try to be an influencer. I want Instagram to be fun. I don't want to take it too seriously. And so, but once I got back from my sabbatical, I wanted to build on YouTube. On YouTube is what I wanted to take seriously. And so there's also YouTube Shorts. So I would cut, shorts that was primarily for growing on YouTube, but I'd also post them on Instagram. But actually, these shorts have done way better on Instagram than they have on YouTube. And so I just started posting them on Instagram, and some of them started going viral. And so that's when I started really growing on Instagram. And so because I feel like I've had some reasonable success on Instagram, I haven't felt as much of that imposter syndrome. And also on Instagram, it's not necessarily a place where I was like trying, really, really trying. I was like, oh, I'll just post and see what happens. So don't have as much imposter syndrome there. It's more so with YouTube that I definitely do feel, just because, yeah, I mean, sometimes I don't even like telling people that I'm trying to be a creator on YouTube, because so right now, I mean, I don't have that many subscribers. It's like 2,500. So 2,500 subscribers for an everyday average person is like a good amount of subscribers, but it's definitely not gonna, and I'm monetized. I think I've made like $150 at this point, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, it can feel a little bit embarrassing when you feel like you are giving something your all and you are still in the baby step stages. And, it can feel like, oh, what if people are gonna like look at my YouTube and be like, haha, like, you're really trying, good for you, kind of thing. Whereas, when for several years, CNBC was such a big part of my identity, and it was very validating to be at CNBC, and it felt like a big part of my identity. I loved it there. I loved what I was doing. And anyone I told that to would be super impressed. But now it's like, yes, I can say I'm formerly at CNBC, and I think it gives me some credibility. But to tell people that I have 2,500 subscribers on YouTube is just like a little bit, yeah. I mean, some people might scoff at that a little bit or something, or they're just not going to really take you seriously. So I just don't even really mention that to people when, like, let's say I meet someone new, right? And they're like, what do you do? I don't even mention that. I just say I do some freelancing in video journalism.
Mm-hmm. And it's very
Yeah.
vulnerable too to put yourself out there.
Yeah, because people are going to see how hard you're trying, and, they might be like, oh, I see that you're really trying, but like you only have like 1,000 views on this video. Yeah, that's sad.
Well, I
So
think
yeah, it is kind of vulnerable.
it is vulnerable, but I think a lot of people who are putting down smaller creators are maybe just subconsciously jealous because they wish they could put themselves out there in a way,
Mhm.
or, like I think that it takes a lot of bravery to start something and put yourself out there, because it's easy to say like, oh yeah, like, like let's say, like, let's skip ahead a couple years. Let's say you have like hundreds of thousands of subscribers or whatever, high number it is. It's easy to be like, oh, that person's successful. That brings her a lot of like sort of validation and things like that. But of everyone who has millions or hundreds of thousands of subscribers started at zero. Like they were at where you are now, and it takes a lot of vulnerability. It's easy to be like, oh yeah, like as 100 whatever thousand subscriber, like of course I'm successful, but like it's hard to like be in those beginning stages. And a lot of people don't even start because they don't want to go through the beginning of stages. They just want to jump ahead, So I think it's really brave. And that's also like, I mean, that's also why the name of the show, my podcast is called Version 1, because you just have to get that first
Oh.
version out there and like start and like, because it's so vulnerable and it's so scary. Like even with this show, I'm like scared to put it out sometimes,
Oh, really? Oh
Yeah.
yeah, because so you're kind of on like your own creator journey as well, right?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Oh, wow. So we really have similar paths then.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. When you're
Yeah.
I want to dive a bit into what your creative process looks like when it comes to your content. So first, how do you source inspiration and come up with story ideas that you want to cover in your content?
Ooh. That is definitely an evolving process. It's been a little bit more so like throwing spaghetti at the walls and seeing what sticks. And up until very recently. And so I think in the beginning, when I had just gone back from my sabbatical, I was like, okay, I'm just going to create content first based on my sabbatical, because it is an interest. I learned a lot, I'll also preface with, I before I started creating content on YouTube, I wrote a few articles for CNBC about my sabbatical that really went viral. And I couldn't even believe that it went so viral. I mean, people who I like know, but never talked to, so many of them said, oh, I saw you in this article. I saw you in this article. I saw you in this article. So many people reached out to me to say that, you know? And so it's just like, wow, this is crazy. And it was like 3 articles in a row that just went crazy viral. And so then I was, and so one person who read one of the articles said to me, Helen, this should be a YouTube video. So I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll make it into a YouTube video. And so I did. I put out maybe like 4 or 5 videos about my sabbatical, and none of them performed particularly well. I mean, they did okay, especially because I had like 0 subscribers at the time. They each maybe have like 3,000 views, you know, nothing crazy. But I also figured that these videos kind of will tell you a lot about who I am as a person and what my background is in terms of my career, my passions, my who I am as a person. And I figured if I want to grow this YouTube channel, people will be able to look back on those videos. You know, if this channel gets a little bigger and evolves, you know, people who become interested in my content, they might go back to those old videos about my sabbatical and just learn more about me. You know, so I figured I have to do this sabbatical content while it's still fresh. And it'll be a way to just tell my story. Things started taking off a bit more when I made this reel. It was a YouTube short / Instagram reel about Da Nang, Vietnam. And it was called like Meet the Cheapest City in Southeast Asia. Because Da Nang, I mean, okay, maybe you can't say that it's possible, you know, it is true that to say that is, you can say that is a bit of an exaggeration, and maybe I shouldn't have said that, you know, from a journalistic perspective, because there are probably cheaper cities in Southeast Asia than Da Nang. But I think from like a value perspective, like the quality of life you're getting for your money, it is actually very probable that that is the best value city in Southeast Asia. So anyways, I made this reel / short, and it really went viral on Instagram, like 1 million views, and got me like 5,000 followers or more, like maybe like 6,000. So all of a sudden I went from like 1,500 followers to like 7,000. And so at that point, I'm just like, whoa, that's insane. I was never able to crack like 2,000 followers on Instagram. How do I have 7,000 now? That's crazy. And so I was like, why don't I create more content about Da Nang and see what happens? And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to do an explainer video, because that's my journalism background, about Da Nang for YouTube. There was hunger for the content about Da Nang on YouTube, you know, on social media. And I was like, I want to tell like a more journalistic story about Da Nang, you know, I want to really break down, why is this place really catching on? Why are Americans moving there for a better life? I joined these Facebook groups for expats in Da Nang, and I was starting to see also a narrative about Da Nang that I had never seen or heard of before anywhere else, and I was surprised. And it's basically a lot of people complaining in these private Facebook groups about, you know, how expats are driving up rent prices, how things are gentrifying, how people are being pushed out. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, that is really a budding narrative about this place. You know, like we've seen it happen in other places like Lisbon, like Bali, you know, but Da Nang was still very much, I think, in this hype cycle. People were still very much focused on hype and come to Da Nang, you know? And so I was like, okay, well, I want to make a video that pushes the narrative a bit and tells a more balanced story about this place. And so I did. And that video really went, okay, I'm not going to say it went crazy viral, because that's like 1 million views or whatever or more, but it was really viral for my channel. Like I think I had like 400 subscribers. And so it has about 50,000 views, and just like an outpour of positive comments. And I never had that to that extent before. You know, just people saying like, this is the best video about Da Nang that I've ever seen. Your journalism experience really shows. Wow. Like your CNBC experience really shows in this video. Wow. Like you just summed up, the last 5 years of my life. Like, people were just so overwhelmingly positive. And yeah, and so my channel really grew to like maybe like 2,000 subscribers at that point, or like 1,800, something like that. So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna ride this. I'm gonna keep doing this Da Nang stuff and see how much more I can milk out of this. It's just been a learning lesson about, how do I want to, what kinds of stories do I want to tell in the future? How do I want to invest my time? Um, and what kind of community do I want to build?
Yeah. How do you approach content differently when you're thinking about it for YouTube versus Instagram?
I mean, I think it's YouTube, I approach it much more as long form, in depth. A video can be 10 minutes long, and that's great. That viral video on Da Nang was like 16 minutes long. But for Instagram, it's all very like bite-sized. So like 3 minutes max. So I think my strategy going forward is to always think YouTube first, and then cut out little chunks of those YouTube videos and as 1 to 3 minute clips, and then post to social.
Gotcha. And
Mhm.
as someone who is, or it sounds like you got laid off, right? So you don't have a
Yeah.
full-time job anymore. So as someone
Mhm.
who is for the time being like working for herself, creating content, things like that, how do you stay disciplined and motivated?
Mm. Yeah, that can be a tough one. Um, so I think that I don't necessarily have a hard time staying disciplined and motivated. Like, I feel like I tend to work really hard. I've always had issues around workaholism, and I really need to work more on like being able to relax without feeling like, oh my God, I have all these things to do. But it's more so like really struggle with wondering, am I on the right path? And wondering, am I doing the right thing? Am I wasting my time? Am I prioritizing the right things? And I think something that has helped me feel better as I'm doing this content creation thing, because it is such a slog, as my mentors have described it. And there's so much self doubt that comes along with it as well. Something that has really helped is I'm working on something a little bit more entrepreneurial on the side that has been bearing fruit. So it's called independent living. And so basically, I'm running a shared home for people with mental and physical disabilities. So it's a business that my mom has been doing for the last 2 or 3 years. She has two of these shared homes, and we started a third one in San Diego. And basically, what you do is you rent a house. So we rented a 4-bedroom house. I had to invest maybe like $13,000 up front. More actually, because we also had to buy furniture and buy like televisions and all these things. So
Mhm.
let's say I had to invest like $15,000 up front. And then you then rent out each room individually to different people. And so then your profit is the difference between your rent and your utilities and everything, and the rent that you're receiving from your residents. So and these are people who often qualify for assistance from like nonprofits or from the government. A lot of them might have some struggles with mental and physical health. Yeah, and so there's a lot of demand for this type of housing, and we just broke even um
Congrats.
as of like a week ago.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, yeah. So that is really exciting. And so I'm no longer losing money on that. And it has been yeah, it's definitely an emotional journey. But it's also, it's something where if you do it right, and let's say you have a few of these homes, like, you don't need a job anymore. And so I think having something that is way easier for making money and way more stable than content creation really helps. Like I'm not putting all my eggs in this content creation basket.
Yeah, totally. I think there's definitely an important lesson there, especially for people who are getting into an unstable field, to try to have something more stable or put their eggs in multiple baskets just so they aren't depending too heavily on one thing. So yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah,
what
100%.
what would you say are your goals for your content looking into the future?
Mm. Something I think I've definitely realized is it's important to build, I think, a positive community, to build a community that is positive and that is there for because you make these people feel something that's really positive, right? Like either they feel empowered or they feel like a sense of like you are speaking to their sense of identity or yeah, or just, empowered or just really enriched. Like, they're there for really positive reasons. Because I think that there are like cheaper ways to court attention, which is like through hate baiting, or through negativity, right? And I do have like some shorts, maybe a couple shorts that have attracted a lot of negative attention. So, for example, there's one called, "Is This the Biggest Tourist Trap in Mexico City?" And man, people are so upset at this headline on the video because they're like, oh, how can you call this a tourist trap? This place has been around for hundreds of years. There's so much ancient culture and history. You just don't get it. Blah, 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 blah. And I think they find it very insulting. And I think that it's also because there is a sort of sensitive history with, between Mexico and the US. And so you have this American who's creating content about being a tourist in Mexico and maybe portraying a place in not the most honorable and not the best light, and because there's already that like very sensitive history and relationship, it makes people feel even more triggered. And so there's a lot of commentary and there's a lot of views. Like this video has like 100,000 views in a few days, but people are not commenting for positive reasons and they're not following. I mean, I probably got like 20 followers from it, but then I have content that has the same amount of views but has like hundreds of followers. And also it's like with the Da Nang video I told you about that got so much positive feedback. I then released a video called "Why Expats in Vietnam Are Called Losers Back Home," and it's gotten quite a good amount of views. Like I think it's at almost 20,000, but people are so angry in the comments. And I think it's attracted a lot of like toxic masculinity in the comments, being like, honestly, the video was not meant to put down men or white men by any means. Like I never said all the losers back home are men. I never said like, oh, all men in Vietnam are losers back home. Like it wasn't like that. It was more like, where does this term come from? And I've had white men like who I know watch the video and say, oh, I wasn't offended by it at all. But I think it's just it's the headline. It's just sort of like a negative video in a way. And it's attracted so much like hate, like people who maybe like a lot of really sexist people too, who are like, oh, people in Vietnam don't say that. It's just, white women who can't find a husband or who have been left behind, who are bitter about men because they are left behind and nobody wants them. And I just realized that you shouldn't court attention just to court attention. You need to be more intentional about how you're building a community, because that's ultimately going to build a sustainable brand. And there's somebody I know who I went to grad school with who started his creator journey around the same time as me, but he spent way more time, like a year, studying, researching, thinking about it, taking courses before he dove in. And I think he's really doing it right. And he is building a brand around, he's covering US Latinos, and he's Latino. And this is an underserved niche. And I think this is also, he's catering to a community of people who I think really needs to feel seen and heard, especially, especially, with all the immigration rhetoric these days and the ICE raids and all that, right? It's a community of people who I think maybe are hurting here in the US, and they need to feel that sense of a pride in their identity, right? And so I think this person I'm talking about, this creator, his name is Fernando, he is building that community for these people where they are able to feel proud of their identity, and they are so positive, and they love him and they support him. And he's at like 20,000 subscribers in like 6 months. It's insane.
What parts of the world have you found to be most inspiring?
Their GDP a lot. And there's just a lot of economic growth happening in Vietnam. And I think people are really, there's a lot of also like digital nomads and expats from Western countries moving to Vietnam. There's just a lot happening there. And so I think going to a place, I think that it was also such a tourist friendly place, and it just had such an easy, wonderful experience there as a tourist. But also it got my journalistic juices flowing, I think.
I love that.
Because I had such a great time there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think whenever I travel to more developing countries, I definitely am much more interested in those places than going to Western Europe sometimes, just because there's so much happening. And part of the reason why I love travel is I love being in chaotic places, and I like the energy of that. And so, I haven't been to Vietnam, but I need to add it to my list and make my way over there soon.
What are some of your favorite chaotic places?
Ooh, I loved Marrakesh, Morocco.
Oh,
Marrakesh was really cool. I backpacked through Peru when I was had just graduated college, and Peru is amazing. And I went a lot of different places. So I'll just say Peru as a whole.
Wow.
China's amazing in that way too, because China has a cool, chaotic energy, chaotic in a good way, And
when did you go to China?
I went to China in 2015. So 10 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So I haven't been back in 10 years, so it could be very different now. I don't know, but
So I didn't really feel that chaotic energy so much when I went in 2023.
Oh, interesting. I bet it's changed a lot, because even in 2015, it was still very much in development in a lot of ways, So I'm curious. Yeah, I really, really want to go back soon, because I haven't been, and I know just in the last 10 years, there's been so many changes.
Definitely. I feel like now it's resembling a bit more like Japan or like Singapore.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Like now I think I did like 10 cities in China when I went, and it's just so like modern and clean and well put together, and it's just very like polished and chic now.
Interesting.
Very clean. Yeah. Very modern now. Yeah, definitely. I think China has changed a lot.
Yeah, I have to go back. I really want to. It's just so far, so I have to like make time to do it. Do like a big like 2-week trip or something. Maybe next year.
Yeah, for sure.
All right,
China's not an easy place to go.
Yeah, no, it is really hard, especially from New York City. It's quite literally on the other side, like, of the world.
It's not even the distance. It's also like you have to apply for a visa. There's a lot that goes into that visa application, and then also like you have to use WeChat. You have to pay for everything with WeChat. There's a lot of like bureaucracy you have to go through to travel in China.
Yeah. And when I was in China 10 years ago, WeChat was just getting started. So I can't even imagine what it was now.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went like a long time ago. Yeah.
Whoa.
I mean, it was around. It was definitely a thing, but it's not to where it is now, I'm sure. But
Oh, okay. Funny because I feel like 2015 is not that long ago. Like if you're talking about here in the US, but in China, because of how fast things have developed, 2015 is like a really long time ago.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Helen, this has been so much fun. Are you ready to move into the lightning round?
Yeah.
All right. What is something new that you've tried lately? It could be anything. It could be totally random.
Oh my God. Oh, what is something new? I guess you could say entrepreneurship, being almost like a landlord in a way.
Yeah, love it. All right. Do you have a lesson or a message that you want to share with listeners?
Gosh. Huh. I would say that life is about balance. Spending part of your time preparing for a better future and part of the time just really enjoying the here and now. And I think that is ultimately what happiness is being present in the here and now, but also spending part of your time trying to prepare for a better future allows you to better enjoy the here and now down the road.
I love that. Absolutely. What is one thing you wish you knew when you were first starting out?
Oh, personal finance, like how to invest, how to find a job. I definitely wish I learned the stock market much earlier. And just, how to network, how to find a job, how to start thinking about the real world and real world survival starting in high school.
Yeah. Yeah. Personal finance is so important. I don't know why they don't teach it in schools.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely starting to. It's catching on a lot more in high school. And that's one of the stories I did at CNBC that I really enjoyed doing. But it's becoming a required class to graduate nowadays.
Good. Yeah, it totally should be. I remember having to
Yeah.
learn a lot of personal finance stuff and just about finance in general when I was interning at CNBC. And I remember watching CNBC all day, and it was like they were speaking a foreign language. And I remember being like, how did I land an internship here? I don't know anything. Like, I barely know what bull and bear means. Like, how are they trusting me to like produce segments, And I had to learn a lot of that on the fly. But personal finance is so important, even if you don't work in business news or have anything to do with business.
Oh, yeah,
it's so important. For sure.
Yeah, CNBC TV can definitely feel like a different language.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Helen, this has been so much fun catching up with you. Could you please tell everybody where they can find you and see your work and support all the things you're doing?
Aw, thank you. So I can be found at Helen, Helen J, my last name Zhao, Helen J Zhao on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok. It's the same username across platforms. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. Like it didn't feel tiring or draining in any way, and just like really enjoyed the conversation. So yeah, I think you're a great podcast host.
Oh, thank you. I think you're a great travel content creator. I really enjoy your stuff. So I encourage everyone listening to go watch your videos and learn a lot about the world. All right. Thank you so much, Helen. Have a good day.
Thank you.